witch is so unique.
The gift of witchcraft.
I was able to see, hear, and communicate with spirits.
A very personal relationship between a person and spirit. Carnal lust and fun things like that.
Working with different energies with spirits and communicating.
Creating magic.
Powerful ritual and powerful spells. She's actually sticking me in the cult.
The role of the witch is to make change.
Blessed be, y'all. Blessed be. People ask me like, okay, I'm a witch and I don't know what to do.
20 years ago, 3 young friends realized they were witches.
They scattered to different parts of the world following magic and spirit.
Now, they're back in their hometown to share what they've learned.
Welcome to That Witch Life podcast, your home for living as a witch in today's world.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to That Witch Life podcast. I'm Hillary. I'm your host today, and we are super excited. Before I introduce my co-hosts, I just want to tell you how excited we are because this episode, which we have the amazing Ivo Dominguez Jr. on to discuss the magic of astrology, is actually our Patreon pick. So we have a Patreon community that's amazing. And at the end of each year, we allow our Patreon community to pick their favorite person from the year. And the person with the most votes gets the slot. And then we do a live recording live via Zoom recording with which we allow our Patreon members to be a part of, and so they can ask questions, they can see the interview process, and they're on video with us. So we're really, really excited that this is happening this year with Ivo. And so first, I'd like to say that, I'm here joined by my co-hosts, Courtney and Kanani, who are fabulous.
I'm Courtney, and I have very little voice left after talking yesterday at a bazaar for 7 hours.
Yeah,
I noticed that Hillary's voice was a little scratchy. So
it's a little scratchy. Well, it's like
Connie doesn't talk to anyone, so my voice is just fine.
Did make you talk to some people. We did have some listeners come up to the booth and we're like, Kanani, this is a listener. You have to put down your phone and talk to someone.
Exactly.
She's like, oh, okay. I mean, literally, she was glad to see listeners. Everybody else.
Not anyone believes that I have ever made the noise. Okay.
Yeah, it's a combo of talking to people all day yesterday and then the night before having a gig where the singing part for me was fine, but it was with a metal band, so it was in a loud bar. So trying to talk to people over loud music is a really quick way to lose your voice. And I know better, but I did it anyway. The whole time I was like, this is a bad idea. And then I was like, whatever. Sometimes we make bad choices and we live with those consequences. So to remind you all how amazing Ivo is, Ivo Dominguez Jr. has been active in Wiccan and the Pagan community since 1978. Ivo is a founding member and former high priest of Keepers of the Holly Chalice, the first assembly of the Sacred Wheel coven. He currently serves as one of the elders of the 14 ASW covens. Ivo has been published in numerous periodicals and is the author of The 4 Elements of Wise, Keys to Perception, a practical guide to psychic development, Practical Astrology for Witches and Pagans, Casting Sacred Spaces, and Spirit Speak, among other works. He is the anchor author for the new 12-book Witches Sun Sign series. In his mundane life, which is clearly very boring, he has been a computer programmer, the executive director of an AIDS HIV service organization, and owner of a bookstore, among many other things. He is queer, poly, and lives in the woods of Southern Delaware with his family of choice. Welcome back, Ivo.
I'm delighted to be here. This is awesome.
Yeah, how have you been? What have you been doing other than being very bored and not busy at all?
Oh, golly. Well, I actually, back in May, had a heart attack and had to have triple bypass surgery. They cracked my
Oh, my
chest.
gosh.
Yeah. I had to hear about
scary.
that from Kanani because I don't Facebook anymore. And I was like, what the, okay. That was
I'll
scary.
give you the really short version. By the way, I'm fine now. I was actually, before the call started, I was telling Courtney and Brian, no, I mean, yesterday I was up on the roof cleaning the chimney, and yesterday I was splitting firewood and bringing it in for the winter, yada, yada. So, quick version. Got kicked out of my family when I was 18 because I was queer, had no information about my family biohistory, if you will. I thought I was cool. My doctor thought I was cool. Suddenly I wasn't cool, came in from working in the garden, had a heart attack. Yay. Went to the hospital, jumped forward to the surgery. They cracked me open. They said, surgery took an hour longer than it should have because they had to look at me and say, oh, his heart's in the wrong place. It's tilted at a funny angle. His right corner is buried in the muscle. And there were several other physical abnormalities. Now, after my lover posted it online about it, I got contacted by several first cousins that I had not talked to since I was literally a child. Oh yeah, we all had that happen to us when we were in our 40s and we had bypass surgery. You're 65, so I guess being vegetarian postponed it for you. But basically, the doc said, from the day you were born, your heart was wrong, and one of these days it was going to, go kablooey.
It was going to do that. Yeah, it was going to have a problem.
Yeah, and if you'd been an athlete in high school or college, you'd be one of the guys that was perfectly healthy and then suddenly dropped dead while playing. So, So I had no knowledge, and the only good news is I recover fast from almost everything. I got kicked out of cardiac rehab early, and yada yada yada. So. But I'm good.
Well, we're so grateful you're doing all right. That's super scary.
You're not helping Kanani with the idea of intense exercise because she's already like, the gym is something I'm going to absolutely do if I have to. And so you're like, I could drop dead. I could drop dead. So not going to.
For you, but I have no way of knowing. I will say though that one of the other things that happened by the way, when the heart attack happened, I actually wrote a pathworking and while I was sitting in the bed in the hospital and sent it to a conference that I wasn't going to be able to attend, so they could, that would be my part of the ritual. And I continued working on the books. I mean, I did take 3.
We are 0% surprised by that.
I did take 3 weeks off from working on the books I was writing during my recovery, and then I was back at it.
But for Ivo, you need to understand, y'all. 3 weeks for Ivo is
like a year. Yeah,
for the average person. Yeah.
I don't do that.
Yeah, I'm very similar. Like I don't, it's like I don't know how to take time. Even when I'm on vacation, I'm not on vacation. Like I'm like, ooh, I can do a house project, or I have time to, work on a new piece of music, or I'm doing this creative project. There's no such thing as just sitting still.
I mean, the only I did those 3 weeks off. I caught up on a lot of books that were piled up that I bought not read yet, which was always a good
excuse. You're like, oh right, I know. I always get books, and I'm like, I have the best intentions. Someday. They sit collecting dust until I dust them, and then I pick them up and dust them and go, I'm going to read this. And then I don't.
Oh God. And I'm starting to, well, first off, it's like going into the morbid place. But when I was in the emergency room, about 2 years ago, that's when my new books started to come to me. So I'm laying there on the gurney, getting all the drugs, having all the things happen. All of a sudden I'm seeing that start of my next book. And I was like, oh, fuck you, book. Not now. But the book.
Not this minute. But
the book's like, well, I was wanting to talk with you, and now's a good time. I'm like, go to hell, book. And then I wrote it, but yeah, that's where it happens. That's where some really wonderful work can happen. Is on.
You're like right now, cool. Thanks.
Generally speaking, muses have bad boundaries.
Yeah.
Oh my God, we need that on a t-shirt. New t-shirt, new merch. Muses have bad boundaries.
I know, it's like it's true, and I always do this thing where it's for me it's like when I need to sleep, I'm like, okay, you need to go to bed because you already don't sleep enough. Sleep is really important for health.
Right,
You're going to get, and then I lay in bed and I'm like, one of two things happens. Either I relive every awkward moment in my entire life and like think about how I could have been less awkward, or, or I like sit there and I start like developing new performance pieces in my head. And then I'm like, and then I'm like getting out the notebook and suddenly it's 4 a.m. and I'm like, what the fuck? This is not okay. Yeah.
Anyway.
On the side note, now that we've like gone down how we all have terrible boundaries around creative work, I wonder what astrology plays into that. So speaking of astrology, that's my segue. Has astrology always been a major part of your practice? Like from the get, was that part of it, or was that something you developed later on?
So I'm going to say weirdly, yes. But exactly what that means for me has changed quite a bit in different stages of my life. I'm going to say that one of the first really occult things I purchased, besides, my first Rider-Waite tarot deck that I ordered online, wasn't online, but through the mail back. Yeah. So remember, this is high school in the 70s. Okay. So I got my first astrological calendar through the mail. Now, I was always a science geek kind of kid, so I loved astronomy, which is not the same as astrology, but they code together in a lot of ways.
Well, yeah, because exactly. They involve the planets. So if you have knowledge of one, it's really interesting the other. Yeah.
So as an experiment, I think it was sophomore year in high school and through junior year in high school, I paid attention to what sign the moon was in and what aspects were happening every day and seeing if it had any impact on my life or if it was predictive or had any value. And it did. Because I had to convince myself that astrology was actually a thing that worked because I had first encountered astronomy that told me absolutely not. So in a way, it began that. Now, here's the other place where it began to sneak in. So I started reading more as I finished up high school and got in, freshman year in college, yada, yada. And pretty much every book that I could find, a lot of them were oldie moldies because that was before the era of a lot of mass market availability of occult material. So it was mostly going to the university library and getting things through library loan, yada, yada. And most of that was really old stuff, ceremonial or alchemy or medieval stuff or folklore stuff. And a lot of them made reference to this is an herb of Saturn, or this is a stone of yada, yada, or this is related. So I said, okay, it shows up elsewhere. So I started saying, okay, I have to understand enough astrology to understand all these tables of correspondences that I keep running into, and why is this? How do these things work? So then it became part of this is the way that I think of my language of how I think about patterns of energy or patterns of essence. In the same way that we talk about not always having the right words in English for something that's a magical thing. Well, it made sense to me through approaching it through herbs and crystals and whatnot that the planets and the signs were another way about talking about particular flavors or categories or colors of energy. So then flash forward a little bit, and I meet an amazing soul, I'm going to say creature, she was, named Ellen Reardon. And she was very bohemian, very avant-garde, very, I don't know, Auntie Mame meets Twyla Tharp. I don't know. It's
yes.
This bizarre person because she was a dancer also. But she was also an astrologer, and she was giving classes, so I took astrology classes with her. Little did I know that her approach to astrology was completely bonkers. It was good, but I mean, the very first night, and I've told the story lots of times, she lit a candle in the middle of her living room, and she danced around the candle, doing 12 different steps to each of them to represent the energy of the 12 signs. And it was very in the body, feeling, expressing the energy. And when we had to calculate by hand, because that's what you did before, we didn't have software yet. But she then made us draw the charts that we did for ourselves and for others in colored pastels or colored pencil or watercolors. And we had to make it look like, it was basically like an illustrated manuscript kind of deal where we were basically expressing.
Wow.
So anyway, so it was already part of my background. And then I read more about different systems of magic in the world. And I went, okay, it's here. It's part of me. So I'm going to say yes. And as fate would have it, Paula Fossbenner, who was the founding high priestess of Keepers of the Holly Chalice with me, was also an astrologer and also a member of the Sabian Assembly. There's a thing where every single degree of the zodiac also has imagery attached to it. So that think about all 360 degrees, and then each of them described as if it were a tarot card. And folks in the Sabian Assembly basically go through the whole year and meditate every year on the images associated with the degree that the sun is in that day, and that's their morning meditation.
Wow.
So anyway, so for a lot of reasons, things led me in that direction. And then I discovered, sadly and woefully, that's not the way it is in many other parts of the pagan, magical, witchy community once I left my little bubble. And I was like,
you're like, wait, other people do it different.
Other people don't use this.
It's interesting. It's, similarly, like when, Courtney and Kanani and I started exploring, witchcraft and the occult and like all of this, it was, it was in the 90s, right? So also like you couldn't, it was limited. Like the options were the library, or maybe you might be able to find like a kind of new agey shop that might have one or two books in the back, but most of it's like,
we had to get on the bus and, and ride downtown, or put gas in Kanani's car, and she would drive us down there.
There you go. There you go.
And not tell our parents where we were going.
Yeah, we wouldn't tell them where they were going, you know. And so it was, you know, I mean, it was very different because, you know, I mean, we've talked about this before, like one of the reasons we wanted to start the podcast is because the opposite problem is true now, which is that there's so much information, like which do you choose, which is, you know, like there's so many different things to choose from, like how do you find where to start? But, you know, similarly, it's like sometimes you're introduced to something and because you have no reference point, you're like, well, this is how it's done then. You know, it's like because you don't have, it's not like you've seen like 200 TikTok videos and gone on to an online class and listened to a crazy podcast, you know, like whatever you have, you know, you only have the resources or the people near you that you can find. And those were few and far between also. So it's like, it's really interesting. That's cool though, how it like kind of just slowly integrated itself into your life in different ways. You know, it wanted to find you for sure. It's like, you need to use clearly. What do you think? How can we best use astrology as a tool? Like how can we lean on that as a tool for our own practices?
I'm actually going to say that for magical folks, the single best use for astrology is as a way of describing magic and energy. Honestly, I have a number of friends that are witches and also knowledgeable astrologers, and it's almost like it becomes our shorthand when we're describing the kind of energy that we're aiming for in a particular ritual or in a particular work or a particular casting, or something, or what's missing what's the missing energy in an incense blend that somebody's putting together. So it becomes really valuable that way. But there's another thing: if you can name something, you can summon it. And it's kind of like astrology helps you go from having the small box of crayons to the big box of crayons to having the big artist gigundous box of every colored pencil on the planet, right? So that gives you the kind of nuance to be able to call something, because, you know, many of us learned about the four elements early on. And it's kind of like, if you can find the four elements inside yourself, you can call them inside and also from without. If you understand what the meaning is of the energy of each of the planets and major asteroids, the 12 signs, yada, yada, that's another thing that you can conjure with. Those are names to conjure with. I think, yes, astrology is great for personal development, for predictive things, for picking timing on various things. But I view it primarily as it is a filter and a language. So it's a toolkit for viewing the world.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think it's a really important, I love that you say that it's like having a small box of crayons and suddenly it's a big box of crayons. And it is, it's like, you know, I think and my next question is really all about like common misconceptions or mistakes, but like there are a ton of misconceptions about how to use astrology, or like, this is it. Like, okay, well, you can't, this is, you know, it's written it's written in fate. Like you can't do anything, you know, it's like, it really, to me, I lean on astrology when I want insight. I want insight and I want help in figuring out the choices and when and how to make the choices, not making choices myself. Right. But it's really common. People will be like, oh, so you just are this because of it. And it's like, well, no, that's not that simple. You know, it's like,
yeah,
what do you feel that, you know, going into the, you know, misconceptions and mistakes, what do you feel those are? Like, what are the common things that people feel?
All right. I'm going to try to make as many as possible in a short span of time. First one.
There's a lot. What are the major ones? There's probably a million.
Your chart says nothing about the development of your solar spirit. And in fact, as you develop over the course of your lifetime, you may have the same chart, but you use it in different ways. So if you're trying to view it as, oh, this is the chart of a highly developed person, never use astrology as a justification for anything. It's if you use it as the infinite pool of rationalization, you're dooming yourself. It's the wrong way to use any kind of divination, really. But astrology is extra easy for misusing that way. Mm-hmm. Here's another misconception. This system of astrology is better than this system of astrology. There are 3 trillion different systems of astrology. And my take on it is, with the exception of 1 or 2 that are just really bogus stuff that somebody just made up to.
Someone just like made some shit up, you know, like out of nowhere.
Make some shit up, put a TM next to it and trademark it, and it's their own, you know, thing. But here's the thing. They are all coherent in the same way that you can have way different systems of music, different keys, different systems, different cultural perspectives on what sounds appropriate. And each of those works well within its own environment and within its own rules. So where you get in trouble is if you pick one over the other and say this one's the best one in the universe. No, it may be the one that's calling to you in the same way that somebody may be called to do classical versus metal, right?
Right.
Though it's good to learn classical and metal because you learn something about each system of music from both.
Really do. Yeah.
You really do. But the thing is that there's some things that are you can borrow from one to the other, and some that you cannot. So, but what I'm going to say is find what feels right to you. The astrologer that is using it within the boundaries of the system and it's coherent, every system works properly, because ultimately it's about looking at things and the relationships they have with each other as a moving target, right? Here's another misconception. It's impossible for anything to repeat in astrology, period. Every single birth chart is different. If any chart that you cast today, there will never be a moment in the history of this galaxy again where that chart will repeat.
It's like I know that, but hearing it out loud is kind of an amazing reminder, right?
Right. Now, some things are going to be very, very similar. Very, very similar. And I think it was Mark Twain who said it first, but I'm not absolutely sure. But he said something to the effect of history doesn't repeat itself, but sometimes it rhymes.
Oh, I love that, actually.
And that's really the case in astrology. You can look at it and say, this looks a lot like 40 years ago when the following things were happening, but it's not ever going to be exactly the same.
But it's not going to be exact. Yeah.
And even if you, and as we add more planets and more asteroids and more stuff, then it continues to change. And by the way, we will continue to discover things and work them in, especially since stars dies in the sky. Yeah, stars die as well. I mean, we may actually get to see a Betelgeuse blow up in our own lifetimes, or maybe in the next 100 to 200 years. But even if that weren't the thing, just every time that we discover a asteroid and plunk it in. By the way, astrology is a sacred science, which means that when new things are discovered, astrologers usually argue for several decades or sometimes centuries before they come to consensus, broad, weak consensus, but consensus about what the new thing actually does in people's charts.
It's just like when all of a sudden Pluto wasn't a planet anymore. And then a lot of the astrology was like, well, Scorpio's new planet is Neptune. And I'm like, no, Scorpio and Pluto are married for life.
Forever.
In a very, very tense.
Yeah, they're not going. Yeah.
Yeah. My Scorpio moon will have nothing to do with changing its planet.
Have you heard how actually the demotion of Pluto by the astronomers actually was a proof of astrology in a different way?
I did, but tell the story.
But yeah, I want to hear it.
Right. So, every 2 years, there's this big international conference and astronomers get together and yak at each other and try to, earn points with their publications so they can get tenure at the college they work at, right? Okay. So we're at the conference. It's the last day of the conference. People are leaving to catch planes and trains. The number of people in the room is shrinking until it's down to they just barely have a quorum. And the anti-Pluto people come forward and they put up the vote and they demote Pluto at the last minute when there aren't people there to argue against it.
No way.
Yes, way. And there's more and it gets better. So remember how I said how you take planetoids or asteroids and the astronomers study them for a while, figure out their orbit, and then eventually when they're solid on their orbit, they how big it is, yada yada, they get together and it goes from it being like 5-6 HP to actually giving it a name.
Right, to naming it. So it's like, yep.
That was the conference where a certain planetoid named Eris got named.
It was like I was feeling Eris was going to throw her golden apple into the astronomy conference.
So the signature, usually when a new planet or planetoid is discovered, the history around it, whatever's going around it, is its signature, like the doctrine of signatures kind of signature of what it's about. Well, Eris is about conflict of various kinds and competition of various kinds. And so that the conference where Eris was named was the one that they demoted Pluto and they was done with dirty deeds and trickery.
Wow.
I think my favorite meme of all time was, it was a few years after Pluto was quote unquote demoted, and they had the probe that was able to fly by it and take those phenomenal pictures. And somebody, of the ice heart. And somebody posted this meme that was the most Scorpio thing I've ever heard,
Right.
where it said, you broke up with me and now you drive by my house real slow. It's like,
That's hysterical.
and I was like, oh my God, that is the most Scorpio
True,
thing
it's
I've
true.
ever
That
heard
is
of.
like so perfect. Oh my God.
That we're not going to work out, but I need to see what's going on with you.
But I need to see.
So,
Oh my gosh.
All right, I'm going to say one more misconception, and then we'll move on to whatever you're going to ask next. How about this? So, do you express every characteristic of your personality and of your psyche that you actually have inside of you in your day-to-day life?
Fortunately, no.
Yeah, thankfully not.
I'm gonna say we don't. And in some cases, it's because we have self-control or, survival instinct or whatever is
I
happening.
want
Sometimes
to
have
avoid
self-control.
prison. That's
Occasionally
where I am
have
at.
self-control.
Need to avoid that.
Must avoid.
And the other one, and sometimes it's because we're afraid to see what people would do if we allow that part of us to come forth, which is where we inhibit ourselves in being creative or in doing whatever else. Here's the thing. If you are whatever you are as a sun sign or and all, you've got a ton of other planets in your chart and they're each doing their own thing in their own arena, right? But the point is, starting the sun sign, what that tells you is you have all those qualities in you, all the qualities you like and don't like about that sun sign that you've read. They're in you. You just choose which ones you express and manifest and which ones you lock down, which is not, which is another way of looking at it. This is the collection of things that you have as options, and which ones you do or don't do is
that up to you?
Yeah. And the limits of society, so you don't end up in jail. Right.
Right.
Courtney?
No. We need to exactly.
I like that you talked about how part of your journey into astrology was you trying to figure out for yourself if it worked.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's an important part of, just life in general, but especially a magical practice for people is to, I think there's this misconception, especially from people who are coming from other religious or spiritual backgrounds, that you just have to believe in things with just pure faith and just belief. And I think, one of the things that I've learned in my magical practice is it's perfectly fine to ask for the receipts.
Absolutely.
It's perfectly fine to ask for substance and evidence as you see it as evidence, and understanding to know that something is true and real. And so I like that, you talk about how that was very much a part of your early process because of your belief in astronomy and facts of astronomy, that you're like, okay, well, if this is also going to be true, then I want to see the receipts for this. I want to see that this is in fact real to my life.
And I still, I toy with ideas about mechanism of action, and I have my own theories about it. But I also, when people say, well, we don't know why it works, and it's like, you know what? I bet you that pretty much everybody takes meds that then nobody knows what the mechanism of action is actually for those.
Right.
There's a ton of things that work that are used in our science and technology without a full understanding
all
of
the time.
what makes them,
everything, the electronics we use, the platforms we use, software we use, we might have a
big
base level understanding of what's going on. But if you're not an expert in those areas, you might not understand how down to the core, the mechanics work, I can roughly explain how my car works, but I wouldn't be able to tell you this does this to do this, to do this, to do this, to do this, because I'm not a mechanic. Right. So it's I agree. I don't think we need to know. I think there's this balance where it's I don't go into things blind. If I'm not just going to have blind faith. That's not my vibe. Right. At all. I think for me, I feel like it's too risky because there's, it makes you vulnerable in a way. But on the flip side, I'm not going to be I need this I need to understand every element of how this, how did this work? Because at the end of the day, we all the time in medicine and technology in so many different areas of our lives, we understand things, but we don't understand them at their core, right? So like, I agree. I think if what we're looking for in our practices is irrefutable evidence in like, you know, and an understanding of every single way something works, we're going to be let down every single time, because we're not going to be able to get this. We're not going to be able to get that. And it's okay.
But it's more about knowing, it's more about being able to believe that something works because there's evidence to it. Not just someone told you this worked, so we're going to go ahead.
Like, you know, it's like, I take this medication, I feel better, so I know it works. I don't need to know how the chemical breaks down in my body, what it does, and what you know, it's like, but I'm not just going to go, yeah, I'm going to keep taking this because, and with like, you know, I'm not going to trust something. If someone says like, oh, you know, if you jump up and down on your left leg while spinning in a circle, your allergies are going to go away. I'm going to be like, well, I'm going to need to understand a little bit of why that's true, you know. But, you know, if someone said, hey, you know, this type of movement can actually like help stimulate blah, blah, blah in the body, and that helps an immune response and lowers your allergies. Or, you know, have you tried this plant for something that you would normally take a pill for? That is like, there's evidence there. So it's good. I mean, I think it's good to be critical without being over the top about it. You know, there has to be an element of like trust.
There has to be balance between the skepticism and belief. And
belief, yeah.
For me, it's like, did it work for me?
Exactly.
Was it productive?
And it doesn't have to work for everyone. I mean, I have plenty of things that work for me that don't work for other people. Before we come back for the rest of the interview, it sounds like we probably should hear from our sponsors, because we're about halfway through the episode and we love our sponsors. So thanks so much for sponsoring us, y'all. When I think of fall, I think of curling up on the couch with the dogs under a cozy blanket, sipping on some hot tea. It's the ultimate comfort move for me, and I am so excited to hear about a new tea blend called Soul Shine from the Jasmine Pearl Tea Company, created by their tea Jedi, Jeff. Soul Shine celebrates the magic of simplicity with dandelion root, which is very grounding, and uplifting tulsi. It is so good, and I am so here for this.
I love their Burnside chai this time of year. It is finally chai weather after all this time, and the Indian black tea is blended with house roasted spices, Chinese pu'er, and ginger. And to make it extra decadent and get the full experience, you can simmer it in a milk of your choice for several minutes, strain, and if you have a sweet tooth like me, add a little sweetener.
We all know that a new baby means lots of sleepless nights, but I've got to say Dark Forest, which is the Jasmine Pearl's low caffeine herbal blend, is perfect for the evenings as they get darker. And I try to cope on 3 hours of sleep, but would like to sleep at some point that night. The sweet fullness of the chicory is balanced out by rosemary top notes. It's almost dessert-like with hints of nutmeg, cacao, and ginger spice.
Oh my God, I love Dark Forest. It gives me all of the cozy fall vibes for sure. I also love the Jamaica. It has this gorgeous popped rice nuttiness that really makes it a great way to introduce yourself to green tea. Such a perfect morning ritual.
Supporting small businesses are very important to us, and the Jasmine Pearl is a family-owned tea importer and specialty tea blender based in Portland, Oregon, who has been crafting tea blends for 17 years and direct sourcing teas from origin since 2004. Their blending and sourcing philosophy is based in the love of fine teas and herbs, which is why they focus on blending with exceptional ingredients, hand blending each batch using mainly organic ingredients, and oh boy, does it show.
So you can check out these phenomenal teas at thejasminepearl.com and save 10% with coupon code WITCH2023. That's WITCH2023. You get free shipping on orders over $35, and don't forget to let them know you heard about them on That Witch Life podcast. Thank you to the Jasmine Pearl for being an episode sponsor.
We are so excited about our new sponsor partnership with Luna & Company Soapery. Luna & Co. is an enchanting soapery with the purpose of elevating your magic through the art of self-care. As witches, this husband and wife team that are behind Luna & Co. Soapery have passionately handcrafted natural soaps and ritual oils with intention. I have not only used them myself, but I have also personally gifted many of their soaps and body oils, and I cannot get enough of them.
They are fantastic. We have included them in our subscription boxes, and I personally have been using their Bridget soap in some of my cleansing rituals. They have all kinds of handcrafted natural soaps that are really great for your skin, but they are truly magical. And so it's a really wonderful way to incorporate magic into your everyday self-care routine.
Agree. I use the Hecate soap and it is absolutely lush. It is so good. Their meticulously crafted planetary and goddess collections are more than just soaps. They are sacred creations, ritually consecrated with the profound intention of helping you channel the unique energies of planets and goddesses in your spell work, rituals, and manifestations.
That is so true. And whether you're just taking a quick shower or a leisurely bath, Luna & Co. Soapery creates a potent tool for personal transformation and spiritual growth. You can elevate your magic and amplify your manifestations with Luna & Co. Soapery. I can personally say I love their Luna and Persephone soaps. They are my favorites.
You can find Luna & Co. Soapery on Instagram at Luna Co. Soap and at their website at lunacosoap.com. Luna & Co. Soapery ships domestically, but they also ship internationally, friends. So for international shipping, please contact them directly prior to purchasing. And everybody can get 15% off your order when you use code LUNAWITCH15. That's LUNAWITCH15.
Thank you so much to Luna & Co. Soapery for being an episode sponsor. I'm really excited to ask some more questions here. For those wanting to learn more about astrology, so like we've talked about like kind of the misconceptions and how you found it and how it can be used as a tool. But, you know, as you mentioned, there's like all these different there's different types of practices and all these different resources for people who are wanting to learn more about astrology, but feel like we often do in this world, like, oh my gosh, where do I even start? What do you have suggestions for what's a good place to start exploring?
Oddly enough, I'm going to suggest doing exactly the same thing that I did at my very beginning in all this when I was in high school. If you are truly a beginner at astrology, pick up any of the many astrological calendars available nowadays, which have a lot of information both in the front and the back, in addition to what's happening each day, and make it a practice of seeing what happens on every given day. Because honestly, astrology is like a language. I've said that several times. I'll keep repeating. And you pick up vocabulary by actually using it.
That's a really good point, actually.
And actually seeing it in practice. And also, just like learning a language, and this is where people also fall down, they try to learn too many things at once.
Yeah, your brain can only retain so much at once.
Yeah, we have limited bandwidth. We have X amount of processing capacity as human beings.
That's true.
And if by the end of a month or 2 months or 3 months, somebody says, hey, tell me some of the characteristics of what Jupiter energy is about, and you can actually open your mouth and say something, that's a great start. Now, the signs are harder for people to pick up often, but once again, that'll happen. Like, here's an easy one to tell you. Look at what sign the moon is any given time in the calendar, right? Then go about your business that day, whether it's going to school, work, or tending your family needs, or whatever it is you're doing that day, and see if people act slightly like that moon sign. Because basically everybody is under this influence of that moon during that. So learn by watching the calendar, watching the things, reading those words, and then pick up a variety of books that are listed as, good starter books. And honestly, you can probably read for a while just on websites before you buy a book. But when you do, consider it not something, you're not going to have too many people, when they read a book, it's kind of like having a one night stand. They read the book, and then they forget about it. It's not that way.
Accurate.
Accurate, right?
Well, I mean,
you got to reread it. It's actually think of it like a textbook rather than
You can't just. I mean, even if you've taken the time to study the whole textbook, even if you did it and paced yourself, you're not going to remember everything in there. It's humanly impossible. You know what I mean? Like, unless you are like one of those people that happens to have like, a brain that is like completely photographic or can recall things. But that is a rare occurrence. I mean, what you said really rings true to me. This like you can't assume that people are like, or you can't assume that you can learn everything all at once. I tell my voice students that all the time. They're learning music. I'm like, you can practice for 5 hours, but your brain is not going to retain 5 hours. Like,
no,
do an hour, take a break, do an hour, take a break. You can only retain so much.
It's the same thing as a muscle, like trying to like build that.
Yes.
You have to build it. And also you have to build connections between that bit of knowledge and all the other bits of knowledge in your head. And that takes time as well.
Yeah.
There's a question in the chat. It says, how would you suggest tapping into the aspects of your chart that you want to express? Example, instead of being a flighty Sagittarius moon mess, tap into that studious, active expression. So speaking to the king of the Sages, what do we say?
Okay. Let me give you a magical technique for that one. Because it's your Sag moon, right? Not Sag sun, but Sag moon. Because
I'm assuming this person says a Sag moon, yeah.
Yeah, I think Tiffany, or time. Yeah. Okay. So how about this? The moon likes threes. Let's say that your moon is in Sag. That means that there are two other moons out there that exist that are also fire moons. So think about the Aries energy for a moment. Think about the Leo energy. Aries is what? Aries is, I'm going to go do it. It's the energy of, I have to grow. I have to go forth. I see that thing in the horizon. I'm running towards it as fast as I can. So it's that cardinal fiery drive to do. Leo energy is what? Focus on the center. Now, that means, if Leo is doing it right, they're radiating their brilliance and they're actually acting as a light in the world rather than doing the look at me kind of energy. But it's like a hearth. It's fire contained so that you can shape it and focus it and hold it solid. The problem with Sag fire is Sag is mutable fire. So it can go from the tiniest little ember to a towering flame that reaches the heavens and then shrink back down to nothing and then wobble back up and down. So you need to think about, how would I do this if I were a Leo moon? How would I do this if I were an Aries moon? Enlist the other two flavors of fire to give you insight onto how to do it. There's a general one if we're a Sag sun, so I'm going to throw that one as well. If you look at all the lists of bad, quote unquote, bad traits and positive traits for each of the signs, there's really a pretty easy way to look at it. These immediately after Sag comes Capricorn. Immediately before Sag comes Scorpio. When a Sag tries to plan like a Capricorn, they get things done. When they lean in the direction of the next sign forward. When you lean back into the Scorpio energy, that's when Sages get all way out of control. And because Sag can also be the sign of excess, a little bit's good, too much is best. So that whatever sign you are, the one next in line is the behavior that best acts as a container for your sign. If you're looking at your moon sign, then the moon is the author of the story that you tell yourself. You convince yourself of who you are by what your moon sign is. I have a Scorpio moon, which is why I have to be really kind to myself, because Scorpio can be unkind to me otherwise. So, which is why I ask my Pisces and Cancer, how would a Pisces do this? How would a Cancer do this? As a way of softening the Scorpio moon's statements about me, to me. So the point is, astrology is a cohesive system. Every part of it connects to every part of it. So there's some logical things to use it to affect. Does being a cusper affect actually So
read the question for our audience.
I'm thinking, does being a
cusper actually affect how your chart would be and the qualities you would have, like being on the edge of Cancer and Leo?
I'm going to say mostly no. A planet is in the sign that it is, period. However, every degree in a sign is not the same as every other degree in the sign. So, for example, the closer you get to my Scorpio moon is in the 29th degree of Scorpio. All right. So we're at the end of the road. So when you get to the last couple of degrees, and especially the last degree, the sign is desperate. The energy of the sign is more desperate to, I've got to accomplish all the things. I call it the setting sun effect. The sun looks bigger and redder when it's on the horizon, even though it's not, just because it's close to the end. I'm going to paint the apartment now that I'm about to move out in 2 days. We tend to complete tasks or attempt to complete tasks when we're actually at too much into at the end. So that if you're in the last couple of degrees, it does change how the sign behaves, but it's still that sign. However, very often, if we're talking the case of the sun, for example, if your sun is, there's only so many degrees away from the sun that Mercury and Venus can be at any given moment. So the chances are that, maybe you have your Mercury and Venus into the next sign that past your sun and you're feeling their pull on you. So it's more complicated, but truly, there's no such thing as being on the cusp of a sign, but each degree has its own qualities based on how far along in that progression through the sign it is. Does that make sense?
That is actually that's really helpful, actually, because I think that, I like leaning in a direction to help soften or strengthen what you would do or not do. I think that's really valuable. And I have a lot of friends who are on the cusp that are well, what does this mean? Does that mean I'm this? Does that mean, and it's well, no, you're in the sign you're in. But I think it's it's really valuable to know what's around you and what energy you can draw in, because, I'm a Taurus sun, Taurus moon, Virgo rising. So I'm very picky about myself. I'm very picky about everything. Right. But I'm also really calm most of the time, unless I'm really mad. It's that bull energy where you're calm until someone pushes you past your breaking point and then you're a psycho. And so it's I have to, there's a lot of ththings that I've had to draw in to balance some of those things out. I'm also tend to be hypercritical of myself. So I have to be hey, would you let's not be mean to ourselves. Is that how you would talk to someone you love? Don't talk to yourself like that, And I think it's a reminder that, we can't, it's not this is your sun sign. This is your moon sign. This is your rising. That's it. That's how you are. You can't pull in any other, this is just, it's written, it's written on the wall. That's it. You can't do anything about it. It's also, I think it's helpful to know these things that you might be, inclined to act or be because knowing that helps you kind of circumvent it, so to speak,
So, one quick reminder for our Patreon people who are here, who may not be sitting at their computers, but are listening. If you want to ask a question for Ivo, pop it in the chat. It could be astrology or it could be, general witchcraft related. Ivo has a wealth of information. And if you want to be on the show, go to the reactions button at the bottom of the screen and click the raise hand. Now, I have one for Ivo that, I know what my answer is, but I think that'd be good to hear it from you. Is I get these. I had somebody reach out to me and ask me, what was my zodiac sign? I'm well, I'm a Cancer, Scorpio moon, big water energy. And they're oh no, I really need a fire sign to be in my wedding. So, because they really thought they needed to have an earth sign, an air sign, a fire sign, and a water sign to do the magic of their ceremony. So, and that's not the first time I've heard that when they're our coven is.
No, I've heard that too. Actually, I've heard that before also.
So what do you say to somebody who's we're missing an earth sign? We can't do the magic without it.
So I'm going to say that as much as I may have enjoyed the movie The Craft, it became a bigger thing. And here's my general answer to it. Everybody has all 12 signs in the same way that we have all 4 elements in us. And if you are a proficient witch or whatever you call yourself, then you should be able to summon whatever kind of energy you need, period.
Boom. Exactly.
And
you can embody that energy. You can embody fire energy. You can embody water energy. You can embody earth energy, air energy. It doesn't, your sign does not dictate whether you can embody that.
Actually, I'm going to throw another monkey wrench in that person's perspective.
Yes, do it.
Okay. I have 0 planets in air in my chart. I got no air in my chart.
I have no earth at all.
And it is
really, I'm like 85% earth.
But the thing is, everybody says, but you like to talk and you think and you're constantly doing airy kinds of things and you have no air in your chart. And I said, yes. And I have a friend whose brother is almost, we were born the same day, like an hour apart, different geographies, but there's a lot of similarities in our chart, right? And he's a person of very few words. So here's the thing. When you have zero of an element in a chart or either you don't have it or the universe goes, I hate a vacuum. Here, have some. And then you have an excess and it's because there's no planet there to act as the moderator to kind of clamp it down. There's no valve so you're
just full of that. Yeah.
So my brain is always going 1,000 miles an hour and doing all the sorts of air things because I don't have any native earth in my chart. I mean, air in my chart, which means that the universe says, here, have some, and it doesn't know when to stop.
Yeah, because there's nothing containing it.
There's no parameters.
And also another one for the pop astrologers out there. What do you say to someone who says, "Oh, I would never date a Gemini"? Besides, good plan.
So all right. So I'll share. So so Jim and I, this coming February, we will have been together for 45 years.
Fuck, man, that's insane.
I know.
That's amazing.
So here's the deal. When we first got together, a couple of astrologers, and including a certain Paula, who was a high priestess in the coven I was in. Oh, you guys will have so much fun, but it'll blow up, and you'll be done in about 6 months. Now, here's why. If you look at our two charts together, from one perspective, it goes like, there is no way in hell this is going to work. My Saturn squares his Saturn, yada, yada. Basically, what the charts said was there'd be a lot of friction, which means heat and passion when you first get together. But you're going to drive each other crazy because you see all each other's flaws in infinite detail. And I actually think that's why we're still together, because over the years, we've been able to kind of rub off each other's rough edges to some degree, because we see very clearly what is lacking or not right about each other. But it could have gone exactly as it had predicted. But because we made the choice to continue to work through all sorts of things together, it just made the relationship stronger in the long run. So there's this weird magical thing about polarity. Well, here's the thing. If it looks like the aspects that can make it go boom and it'll be short-lived, they're exactly the same aspects that with a different application of will and choice results in something that's the exact opposite.
I mean, it's that like using this as a tool, you have this insight that there could be conflict. So you're prepared for the conflict. So when it comes, you decide, rather than saying, no, I'm not going to, whatever, hey, we might butt heads a lot. So we need to figure out how to hold space for each other and be kind and patient with each other. Right. That's where I think people miss the tool that's available to them sometimes, because they don't realize that you can, that's good knowledge to know. If you know that, it's in any way. Like if I know that, astrologically or otherwise, that my partner has a tendency to do XYZ thing that might really drive me fucking crazy, then I know how to
deal with it,
mitigate that a little bit. It's not that it wouldn't irritate me, but you're accepting that that's part of who someone is. And so you're signing up for the ride,
or make use of it, because imagine having somebody that cares for you, loves you, and is actually able to see what's wrong and tell you.
Yeah. Helpful.
Real feedback. So it can be experienced as real feedback, or it can be experienced as long as it's said with the intention of, I want to help.
Right.
It's in a different, it may be painful.
Well, yeah. Truths are hard sometimes. Hard truth is a phrase for a reason.
It's also Ivo, I don't know if you remember what Brian's Venus is in. I'm drawing a huge blank. Do you remember? Venus and he's gonna pull it
He's
up.
like,
right
I'm
now.
gonna look right now.
I would have to pull it up. Unfortunately, one of the downsides of all the charts I've done over the years is I can't remember all of them.
I can't.
Yeah.
Well, I'm drawing like I think his Venus isn't something super Earth based, and so therefore his love for me is not necessarily expressed in poetry and wine and roses
No,
and sweet words.
that's for sure.
His love is coming home, slamming a keychain with mace on the counter and says, "I will not see you leaving the house without
It's
this
practicality.
again." And then walk
It's
and turning and marching off. And
Which is like the thing is when we understand that about people.
He was about to say something.
I'm gonna say that I'm gonna say that actually is probably coming from his moon in Aquarius.
Oh yeah, that's right. He also has that, but it's like super practical where he comes out with a giant flashlight and he's like, "I'm going to check to make sure the breakers are in session."
Right? That
See,
works.
like you need those people, and that's the thing is like that's how love people show love in so many different ways. You know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I love that. He's like, here's some mace. You will not be leaving the house. I'm going to make sure you're protected all the time. I mean, that's like, again, it's like insight to understand, like, that's an act of love for that person. So it's like, it's like they just did something like really kind. And like, that might not be what you were thinking is a romantic gesture, but for them it is,
Well, what is useful in astrology is that you can look at somebody's chart and figure out their love language and which things that they're likely to appreciate.
Yes.
So we have another another question in the chat, not along the lines of what we've been talking about, but how would you deal with a lack of motivation and feelings of melancholy when it comes to upcoming Sabbats or events? I know this year I wasn't very excited about Samhain, and I've been having the same issue with Yule when I'm usually very excited for them.
Well, I'm going to say I can't tell you because that sounds like it's a lot about what your relationship is to a bunch of different things in your life right now and to your practice. However, I can give you something that is likely to be helpful in reinvigorating your understanding of the holiday and thereby perhaps giving you a new doorway into it. So, for example, let's think about the astrology of the Sabbats rather than the folkloric or mythological approach. All right, so what's the deal with the winter solstice? I assume you're in the northern hemisphere. Otherwise, we'd be talking about the other one, right? So here's the deal: winter solstice is the longest night, the shortest day. Everybody says, "Yeah, I've heard that before." All right, that means that it's also the equivalent of the year's dark of the moon. How do you so it may be that the way that you embrace light returning is to first fully embrace the dark. Fully embrace the, going back into the cauldron, going back into the velvet night to begin, going back into the dark earth, and then, getting prepared to come back. And also look at it in the terms of, the solstice is the sun entering into Capricorn. You know what? Capricorn gets a bum rap, but it's actually very spiritual in its own way. And if you look at the little squiggle that makes Capricorn, I'm going to give you a way of looking at it. It's like, here's this spiritual entity and dive. It's going down deep into dense matter and has to get incarnated and then has to climb up from the bottom of the ocean. It's a sea goat, has to climb from the bottom of the ocean all the way up to the top of the mountain. When it gets to the top of the mountain, it has an epiphany. It has a view of the whole world. It has a view of what it's supposed to accomplish in life. And then it can come down off that mountain like a mystic that has actually gotten a view of what they need to do next. So I would work on Yule being the time that you work to discover from your personal depths in your personal mountaintop, where do I go next? What's my renewal? Because that's when the spark makes the choice of, I'm going to come back and do this hard ass thing called incarnation all over again, or I'm going to get active in the world again. So, but I also remind myself that all the Sabbats are their opposite. So that at the same time that Yule is about the long dark of the night, you also have at the opposite side of the world, the longest day, but that's also the beginning of the diminishment. It's the peak. It's once again, it's a peak moment, but it's a peak that then we're going to start going down. Samhain is also Beltane. Sex and death aren't that far apart from each other. Understanding that at one we claim we realize that we're wearing a mask that we drop, Samhain, and at Beltane we realize that I like the mask called my body that I was born into. So I'd retell the stories of what the Sabbats are about from a perspective of the astrological transition. And it's going, and one of the reasons why people hit the wall a lot of times with Yule is that you're going from Sag energy to Capricorn energy and seasonal affective disorder at the same time. So it's a hard crash, but it's about becoming incarnate. And Saturn rules Capricorn, which is Yule, which is the ruler of all things melancholy, both the stuff that leads to productive stuff and the stuff that doesn't. I don't know if that was helpful. Hopefully it is.
I think that's very helpful for all of us, and it's interesting that you remind that these. I mean, the ancient Irish, I think they may have, I don't know, they may have been aware of the fact that that south of the equator, things were opposite, because they said that Bealtaine is Samhain in the other world. Like there was already an innate sense that there's something
that a flip-flop.
There's a flip-flop, that there's the upside down. I saw this brilliant Stranger Things Christmas t-shirt yesterday at the Winter Moon Bazaar. So it was pretty great.
One of our covens did it recently, but several of them done over the years, was where they intentionally, over the course of the year, as they celebrate the 8 holidays, they make mention of and include the opposite holiday in each of the celebrations. So at Bridget, they're also in doing Lammas, and you get the idea. So you celebrate the one you're in, but your altars and your ritual includes reference to what exists on the opposite side of the wheel.
The one that exists. Oh, that's fascinating. That's awesome.
You kind of do it at Yule without thinking about it, because you're focusing on that sun, and even though the sun's not around.
Yeah, that's actually true. Now that you say that, it's like you're thinking about this thing that's coming, right? Even though it's not there.
For a long time.
And Shakespeare knew that with Midsummer Night's Dream, because this whole thing, it was about at night at the summer solstice.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, for fun, this coming year, the full moon and summer solstice are almost at the same time, so that you can double up on that bright light energy.
Ooh, that's awesome.
Oh man, last time we had that kind of crazy time where we had like the full moon on Samhain was, oh man, that was some very large doors opening. In fact, you'll appreciate this, Ivo. Yesterday at the Winter Moon Bazaar, there was this lovely couple there selling elf doors, and they were doing it all for charity. Absolutely gorgeous. And as I was walking by, the woman walks right out in front of me, and she goes, "Hi, do you have an elf door in your house?" I said, "Oh, no.
You're like, hell no.
I said, "I want you to know your work is so beautiful, but I wasn't going to go into the whole, we live a little bit in a Grand Central Station of energy. I just said,
you don't
we can't have any more doors." But I love what you're doing, and I wish you the best.
Yeah, you're like, this is, I mean, they were adorable and very, very beautiful. Like the craft on it, but I was like, I'm not, no, that's okay. Because no. Let's see if we have any other questions. Okay. I'll go to my question. So I know that, I know we've talked a little bit about your book series, but I wanted to, for people that aren't already familiar, can you tell us a little bit about your Witches Sun Sign series, and like, what people can expect, what's already out, what's coming, what's people can look forward to?
So basically 12 books. I'm the anchor author, which means I write about half of each of them. And then there is a secondary author that is of the sign, so that each book has me basically as the continuing thread with the core astrological knowledge, and then other folks that are actually of that sign to speak to lived experience, and a bunch of other folks that do short pieces as well. And honestly, you don't need to be an astrologer. You don't need to even know any astrology to actually make use of the series. It is part of my so carefully hidden evil plan of trying to encourage more witches to use astrology in whatever fashion they can. So,
wow,
you're like,
nobody
maybe if I do it like
that.
This.
Nobody noticed that, right?
It's a good secret.
Right, it's a very big secret, right? So, but basically, it really is designed to focus on thinking of where the core of your power comes from. The sun represents the core of solar system, of your energy, the centering point in astrology, and the tree of life, etc. So it really is about getting more in touch with your personal power from the perspective of that. And also working really hard in each of the books to say, and these are the ways that you should not paint yourself into a corner about what you think your sign should be about.
And also,
It is not an end all be all.
No.
And also, you're speaking of your master plan to turn us all into proficient astrologers. As our keynote in our Magick of Astrology mini-con in April.
Right.
I know it's quite a ways away, so you can tell me.
Yeah, but still.
But if you have any thoughts
Not that
about
far.
what people might be able to expect to learn from you during our time together, with a sneak peek.
Yeah. A bunch of easy to use tools to use whatever the astrology is for the time that you're going to be doing a ritual, to have that inform and shape and support what you're trying to do in the ritual, rather than it being, a sideline. We're also going to look at ways in which you can amp up the power of existing techniques you have with amulets or tools or oils or other workings by adding in some overtly astrological stuff. And I'm going to add another last thing, and that is we're going to talk about the fact that the 12 signs are spirits. Think about it from an animistic perspective, or even if you don't do that, from a perspective of how many human minds have been imagining, thinking, dreaming of, calling into being the thought forms that are the 12 signs. So these are functionally as powerful as many of the beings that you're likely to call upon for any purpose, and are rarely called upon by the majority of witches and pagans at this point. So that's part of it as well.
That's so exciting. I know.
It'll be fun.
What books are out and what books are out already for those who aren't in the know? We are in the know.
I think we're up to Scorpio, and pre-ordering has begun for Sag, and then they're dropping them like 3 a quarter. So early next year, all 12 will be out. I will say that the least fun part of the whole series was writing and wrangling. Wrangling authors is probably more trouble than writing.
Yeah.
Truly.
Yeah.
And it's, it was 12 manuscripts in 14 months. That was the brief.
Yeah. Wrangling
That's
artists
incredible.
is like herding cats. Like, it's horrible. It's like,
And there's also pagan authors that have like 17,000 things going on. I mean, I can't even tell you how many things I owe people.
Because most of the ones that you want are already busy.
Right. You're like, I want you because I already like your work and you're already doing things. And then at the same time, you're like, wait,
you're busy.
You're busy. So I'm going to be running after you.
No, but if nothing else, your sun sign is good. You might want to read your moon sign or your rising as well. And if you're actually interested in learning astrology, just all 12 books add up to a basically solid introduction to what the 12 signs are about.
It's nice too, because I think, but I mean, exactly. It's nice because it's like, it's parsing it out. Cause I don't know about you, the rest of us on this call, but like, if I get a book that's giant, I'm going to look at it and I'm never going to open it because I'm going to be overwhelmed by it. Like, I'm going to be overwhelmed by partially that's ADHD, but like, it's like, I'll look at it and I'll be like, that's cool. And then I'm going to walk away. But I think that, when we can, it comes down to exactly what you were talking about before, which is parsing things out in a way that is manageable, and absorbable. So I love that is the case because, picking up a small book that you could read through on a plane or, on a day off or whatever, it's not this thing that's like mocking you from the corner being like, I haven't been picked up,
And what a wonderful gift to give to, even if they're not like witchy people, but just people that are astrology or magically minded.
Yes,
that's also,
exactly.
That's going to be something that's be very, very popular.
Well, other than the books that are continuing to come out, what is next for you? Do you have anything coming up other than our awesome mini-con? What else is going on?
Well, I'm actually working on 2 other books.
Oh, so just definitely like keeping it slow and mellow.
I mean, you only just did 12. So,
that's really, I'm glad that you're not being lazy about it. Yeah.
One of them's easy-ish. So, one is more complicated. It's the flip side to Keys to Perception. It's a book about raising, shaping, managing energy and magic so that it's really all the active talents and ways to control and move energy. Then the other book is probably, I've made a list of 40. I'm going to narrow it down, but think of it as like excerpts from Ivo's Book of Shadows. And it's basically rituals, techniques, recipes, all things to do as opposed to theory.
Oh, yes.
Amazing.
That'll be great.
Yes. Excellent.
That's always
oh
great.
my God. I know what I'm going to be getting.
that's gonna
Some
be so good.
Pisces for his birthday.
So the energy book is about 3/4 finished. The other book is still in the outlining. So, probably like by the end of the year, I'll have both out as manuscripts, and then I've got to find homes for them. So.
Shop around.
Well, that's very exciting. I'm excited. That's awesome. For those that aren't familiar, where can people find you?
Honestly, ivodominguezjr.com. I mean, it's always best to catch up with me on the website rather than whatever. I'm all over social media, but honestly, it's really hard to know what the algorithms allow and who gets to see what. So if you actually want to see my schedule of where I'm teaching, either in person or online, my website's the place to go. And it's my whole name, ivodominguezjr.com. There's also a ton of path workings that have been recorded you can listen to there. There's a ton of chants that are recorded that you can listen to there. There's a lot of free content there as well.
Fantastic. Socials are hard because, you can go, you can go back, but if it's a different time, especially, we have listeners that are from all over the world. So if you're asleep when something gets posted, you might not see it. I always recommend, I follow people on socials as well, but I always recommend websites just for concrete, not missing anything,
And then you get the whole list in front of you.
Well, yeah, you're not like, wait, did I miss a post?
It's in the ownership of the website owner and not in the hands of
multinational,
of the multinational corporations. Yes,
exactly. Well, we appreciate you so much. And it's so good to see you and it's so good to have you on again. And we're really, really excited for the mini con. It's going to be so great. And we're thrilled that you're going to be our keynote. So thank you so much for coming on. And I hope that the holidays are amazing for you. And we appreciate you so much. And to all of our Patreon members, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you so much. We quite literally could not do it without you.
Exactly.
And we're just so grateful for the support we have. We'll talk to everyone next week. Bye, y'all.
Thank you for listening to That Witch Life podcast. Our music is by Dustin Schultz, editing by Corey Drake. If you like what we do, please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts. If you want to support the show, you can buy us a coffee or check out our merch on our Etsy store or join us on Patreon for bonus content, ad-free episodes, or to join our Witch Squad. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For show notes, audio transcript, or to ask us a question to answer on a future episode, go to thatwitchlife.com. Until then, keep moding that shit. We will talk to you next week.
So mote it be.